just you and me here tonight, home alone. You're wearing that red dress, you know, girl, you know, turns me on. The way you're moving like that drives me out of my mind. Why don't you come a little closer? Let's heat up this living room tonight. Yeah, you're fire, fire. I wanna touch you all over, even though I know it's gonna burn. Fire, you're fire. You're so hot to the touch, girl, I can't get enough of your love.
Hello again, everyone. Welcome back to the Chit and Chat Encouraging One Another podcast. And we featured songs by Joel Gibson Jr. And today's song was Fire, one of his newer songs that's been out. You can check out his website at joelgibsonjrmusic.com for his upcoming schedule and events, as well as the ability to buy some merchandise, hats, hoodies, coasters, and much, much more. Check out his website. Follow along. He is definitely going places. He is one of the up-and-coming singers here in the Pacific Northwest, and he is making a huge name for himself. That's Joel Gibson Jr., and his website is joelgibsonjrmusic.com. Hello everyone, welcome back to the Chit Chat Encouraging One Another podcast. I'm your host, Jody Sheffield, and I've learned two things doing podcasting in the 4 months I've been doing it. Is one, don't be afraid to reach out and to ask people. Just if they want to come on the show for an interview, don't be afraid. And two, expect the unexpected. And the 4 months I've done this, I have talked to people who I never ever thought I would be able to talk to. And today's guest goes on that list. He played football for the Arizona State Sun Devils from 1981 to 1983. He played for the Seattle Seahawks from 1983 to 1989. And he coached with the Seattle Seahawks from 1990 to 1994. It is my honor today to have on Mr. Paul Moyer, as I'm sure, talk about sports. I will not miss an opportunity to talk about sports with him and his knowledge and players he played with. I'm really excited about that. And I'm really curious to know who or how he was encouraged throughout his career, who inspired him or motivated him to be the player he was and to do the things he is doing now. And I hear him on Seahawks pre- and post-game show sometimes, on the radio sometimes. So I'm really excited to talk to Mr. Paul Moyer here on Chit Chat, Encouraging One Another podcast. Hello there.
Jody, how are you?
Not too bad. Yourself?
Good, thanks.
I'm super excited to be talking with you today, and thanks for taking a few minutes out of your busy day.
Oh, my pleasure.
I did a brief introduction for you already, so let's get rolling, shall we?
You got it. Thanks.
First of all, thanks again for the opportunity to talk with you today, and I got some icebreaker questions we'll kind of get going before we get into good conversations. You ready?
Yes, I am.
So I'm giving you the opportunity to draft a offensive player and defensive player for your new organization. One pick for offense and one pick defense. Any era, any person. Who you going with?
I get a choice of offense or defense, or I get one of each?
You get one of each. So
Okay.
your first two picks of your team.
Oh boy. Well, I gotta go. I gotta go back a ways. I'm gonna go with Kenny Easley on defense. Partly, obviously he's a very good friend of mine, and I got to play with him pretty much my whole career. But he's probably the best athlete I've ever been around, and I always throw in what's an athlete. Today someone sees someone run really fast or jumps really high and says that's an athlete. I think of an athlete who can do everything. And Kenny was a scratch golfer. I mean, he played on UCLA's freshman basketball team. He probably could have played quarterback for us. He and I used to have some fierce ping pong matches during camp. But if he didn't have the kidney ailment, which cut his career short, obviously, he would have been known as one of the greatest, if not the greatest safety ever to play the game. He was that gifted. So I'll take him on defense. On offense, I'm going to go back at era again. I'm going to go with John Elway. Partly because he's one of the few guys who could win without a great team around him. I mean, he went to 3 Super Bowls, maybe 4. I think it was 3 before he finally won the last 2. And the teams he took the Super Bowl team with I'll throw one of it at you, 1986. I think we beat Denver the last game of the year at home, something like 45-7. They went on and went to the Super Bowl and ended up losing, but it was because of him. Same thing when he played Cleveland. And he was so gifted when he came out of college. So those are my 2, old school.
Was Kenny Easley one of those guys who hated losing, period?
Oh, man. Yeah, I mean, he's Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, that kind of competitive nature. He didn't sleep. When we were in camp in Cheney at the time, he would knock on my door, at 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning, and we would go golfing for 9 holes. So he was a guy who was always in motion on doing things in practice when he wanted to, not always, but when he was healthy. Practices could be pretty intense. The games afterwards, flying home, could be intense. So yeah, he was a pretty competitive guy.
Question number 2 is: if you had the opportunity to invite 4 sports personalities over for dinner, living or deceased, who are you inviting over and why?
Well, I'm a golfer, so Tiger Woods would be one. And I like to be around, probably the ones I'm throwing out there it's just about people who excel at greatness. Tiger, there was actually a clip from him, the last tournament he just played, and it was one where he hooked the ball around 60 yards around the trees with all the fans lined up right in front of him, and which I can't even believe that they didn't move them back. But they have somebody filmed it, a fan on their phone, and you watch his focus. And he was visualizing the shot, and he backed away. Excuse me, I gotta grab something to drink on you. Sorry about that.
No problem. Wow. Don't want you dying.
I didn't leave it. But it was just the focus, and he had to reset. And the way he visualized that whole shot was extraordinary to me. So he'd be one, and I like golf so much, I could probably do another one with Phil Mickelson, mainly because I think he's so fun, and even though he's going through some issues right now, but he'd be a fun guy to hang out with. But I'm not going to use him. 2, I was a Kobe Bryant fan growing up. Same deal. I mean, it's just the greatness on him and what he expected from his teammates and himself, and never wavered. 3. Living or dead? Well, that's a great question. Tom Brady. I've met him before. He did something for my son when my son was being recruited at UCLA, and he decided he didn't want to play baseball anymore. He was on a scholarship to Gonzaga. And while we were being recruited by Rick Neuheisel, my son, Tom Brady was on the field practicing at UCLA.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, it was really cool. And so Rick said, "Hey, come on, let's go over and say hi to Tom." You know, he's working out. I think he was with Julian Edelman or somebody, and his trainer or kind of his personal trainer. Excuse me. And so Rick introduced us and kind of told the story that my son was looking to leave baseball. He wanted to play football. And Tom put his arm around him and talked with him, and, you know, how difficult that was. He played baseball when he was in high school, and, you know, to focus just on one would be a tough decision. And I remember when we were leaving, he said, "Hey, Nick," and he called him back over. And he put his arm around him again. And he just talked with just those two for about, 3 or 4 minutes. And we finally walked away. But it was just something that I went, God, what a great guy. And I said, what you see, I really believe is what you get from him. So amazing guy. So that's 3. And then the last one, wow. Ken Griffey Jr. Again, okay. These are all just great players and people. Mm-hmm. I think all of them can golf too, so that'd be a really good 5-some out golfing. So if
that would, yeah,
happen, I would like
it. Do you have a favorite sports movie? I'm sure you're flooded with sports 24/7. Do you have one you can sit down and watch a few times?
Oh my goodness, yeah, I'm one of those kind of movie guys like Caddyshack and Bull Durham, and know all those scenes and all the lines. My favorite movie, though, might be, I think one of my favorite ones is On Any Given Sunday.
Oh, yeah.
Just a really, I knew the producer and directors, met them, and just how they went about making that movie.
They're huge cast.
Yeah, just and just amazing scenes in there. You know, for those who really didn't watch it, go watch it. It's a really well done movie, and you're right. Just a bunch of superstars in there,
and they were all like who's who. I mean, there be some good guy, LL Cool J, and a whole slew of guys.
Yeah, no, that's an impressive. I love that one, but I will say the one I've seen the most, it probably have to be Bull Durham and Caddyshack, though. Remember the Titans is probably up there too.
Oh yeah. I've seen that one anytime it's on TV. I'm like, well, I said, you already watched this. Yeah. So
yeah. Watching it again.
You don't understand. There's some powerful lines in that movie too. Oh my goodness. Oh, yeah. So Hollywood's coming to calling you, and they want to do a Paul Moyer movie. Who do you want to play your character?
Oh, that's easy. Brad Pitt.
Okay.
My wife, when I first met her, she used to think I looked like Mel Gibson, or she had a big crush on Mel Gibson, like Tequila Sunrise, one of those movies, and she, whether she thought I looked like him or she just demanded all her friends say that I looked like him. I'm not sure which, but yeah, I mean, hey, if you're gonna, you got to have a bit of a fantasy that someone thinks you look like, Mel Gibson or any of those guys. That would work.
All right. Sounds good. Do you have a hidden talent? You mentioned golf. Do you have another hidden talent besides golf?
Well, I like sports. Okay. I like playing tennis and golf, ping pong, pool. I'll give you a hidden talent. Baseball, though, was kind of my best sport coming out of high school. But hidden talent, Dave Craig and I used to compete at everything from pool to bowling to cribbage. It didn't matter. But he was one of the few that owned his own pool table. And you don't play with those guys without wagering some money.
Mm-hmm.
And he, being the quarterback, had more. So it was getting expensive for me because he was whooping me pretty good. So I bought a pool table and back then a VHS tape, and I practiced for 3 months and would not play him. I did not tell him I bought a pool table or practiced.
Way before YouTube.
Yeah. And then proceeded to make up for all the lost earnings in one night. My wife remembers this well. She tells a story about how competitive I am, and she likes that story. So that would be one of my hidden talents.
That's awesome.
Can you get the few listeners I have? I more and more each week, but a brief bio about yourself and what you're doing now.
Well, I'm a president of a trust company called First Hill Trust Company. We have about 4 companies underneath us there, and we really specialize in employee benefits. We're registered investment advisors, so we manage money. We do all the administration, record keeping on the retirement side, as well as on the medical side. We do all the work there for renewals, and as well as on the administration. So been doing that for about 5 years. But when I was done coaching after 1994, I went into the kind of the financial service world and worked for some asset management companies out of New York, and then kind of settled into this role about 5 years ago. So that's what I'm doing up here in Seattle.
You mentioned you're married. How long have you been married for?
I am going on 33 years. A recent grandfather. My daughter and her husband have a baby, Lennon James, who she was born about 5 months ago. And then my son, who's 30, and he ended up playing baseball at Gonzaga for a year, and then football at Cal Poly and the Big Sky against Eastern Washington and Montana and them. So yeah.
I recently watched a couple of videos on YouTube and just kind of a little brief bio about you. You played 5 sports in high school?
I think ninth grade. In ninth grade was my last big one, where I wrestled, track, baseball, football, and there was another one. Football, basketball, baseball. Oh, track and wrestling. Yeah. So 5 sports in ninth grade. After that, I just played football and baseball. My sophomore year in high school, I didn't even play a sport. I had a knee surgery and was out the whole year, and didn't really want to play football. But I had a good friend of mine who said, well, you couldn't even make our team. And it was a really good team. I mean, we were state California CIF championship 3 years in a row, won it my junior year. But the story behind that one is he was playing corner. And so I went out just to prove that I could make the team. And I ended up taking his position. So I have them to thank for my career.
Was there someone who inspired you in those sports, a coach, a parent, or mentor who said, don't quit, keep pushing, you may have to face some challenges, but keep going?
Yeah, I don't think anybody who makes it, probably to the level I played, you got to have somebody who mentored you, encouraged you. Start for me, easy one, my parents. My mom and dad were both very supportive, and, particularly my mom. I mean, my dad was working, but my mom made sure I went to every event and, was shuttling us around. And, she's definitely number one. And then I had a high school baseball coach who just encouraged me, that kind of got me to the point where he said, you have a shot, maybe not professionally, but, in college, as an athlete. But probably the big one was when I went to junior college at Fullerton Junior College. And I had 3 guys there. Hal Scherbeck, who was at Fullerton Junior College, the winningest junior college coach in history. And then a guy named Al Fiola, and just recently passed Jeff Jesperson. I mean, those 3, without them, I wouldn't be here today. And you brought up, making sure I kept pursuing and not quitting. I was going to quit football and move or go back to Cal State Fullerton and play baseball. And I just had a horrible junior year. I got benched after 3 games. I was probably a little homesick as well. And I remember Al Fiola, my secondary coach at Fullerton Junior College, calling me and saying, hey, what are you doing, basically? You want to play baseball, go play baseball at Arizona State. But if you quit, you'll regret this the rest of your life. And, you're not a quitter. And I just, it was just a tough love conversation. And Al Fiola is probably the biggest influence in my life. And so I turned it around. I mean, I decided to keep playing football. I had a great spring, great senior year. The rest is history. Decided not to play baseball. So Al Fiola. Willie Shaw is another one. He was my secondary coach at Arizona State. after I'd lost confidence. And Willie's, his son's Nate Shaw, who's the head coach at Stanford. Willie really was the one guy who believed in me going into my senior year. And I'll never forget it. Our defensive coordinator yelled at me at practice during spring football. And I heard Willie Shaw grab him and say, "Hey man, just let him play. Just stop yelling at him. Just let him play. He's playing well right now. Let's just let him go out and do his thing." And I heard him say that. And then he ended up starting me my senior year. And I'll never forget that. That little thing in the back of my ear that I go, he believes in me. And that was a big moment for me.
That's all it takes for a lot of folks, who are young, really young, is this, I believe in you. Just keep your head up, keep going. And that does, that does a lot for someone's ego, someone's drive, I guess.
Yeah, I think there's so many ways to do that too, Jody. To me, there is tough love. You got to be honest with people. If I have a guy who runs a 5.2 and he's playing safety, I got to have the conversation with him.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I want to encourage him on what he's really good at. And more importantly, if he does have that skill level and it's just maybe, mental, and lost confidence, I want to encourage that. But I think you have to have tough love and you treat everybody different, but fairly. And you've got to have those. I've had them in my business career, where, pointed me in another direction, said, "That's not your strength. This is your strength." And, just encouraged me to really, they always say, don't worry about what you can't do, really focus on what you can do.
Right.
And I try to surround myself with people like that who are positive and, hey, no and negative is not an option. Let's focus on the positive part of it. And look, that's the great thing about America, man. If you really, truly don't complain about it, man, the opportunities are endless.
Was there a player you liked growing up, like watching on TV? You're like, I want to be like them, or like just kind of admired their playing style?
Well, two parts to that. I grew up in Orange County, California, and you'd think I'd been a huge Ram fan, which I was to an extent. But I became more of a Raider fan. So I was, I had Daryl LaMonica, George Blanda, way back. What was the question again? Sorry, I had that two-part answer.
Was there a player you like watching growing up and kind of how you wanted to play?
Yeah, and so the guy that really, this will come back it'll sound like a backhanded compliment, I guess, but was Nolan Cromwell. And Nolan was a safety for the Rams, played quarterback, I believe, at Nebraska, really good athlete. And I want to say it was my senior or junior year in college, and I went to one of their games, and I was in the end zone, and I just watched him. And I said, I can do that. I think I can play at the next level. And it was more, he was such a good player. I was just watching his play, and I thought, okay, I can play similar to him. Maybe my game's a little different, but that was a guy that got me to where I thought, okay, I can do this at the next level.
Arizona State came calling. Were there any other colleges? That was the candidate came down to that college you wanted to go play college ball at?
Yeah, junior college is a little different because you don't have as many universities coming at it because they want freshmen back then, particularly. But I had USC, and I grew up a diehard USC fan. My cousin Toby Page played quarterback there. My uncle was a running back there. So, and my dad and my family, we had Trojan gear everywhere in our house.
Wow.
We were USC Trojans. And I believe North Turner was the secondary coach and John Robinson was the head coach. And they were just kind of going back and forth, me and another guy. And I was like, I'm making a decision. And so when I went to Arizona State, it was easy. It was, 4.5, 5 hour drive from my house. They had some unbelievable players coming back. So I knew we were going to be really good. But yeah, I had SC, Arizona State. I went to Illinois. I'm not sure why. BYU recruited me. They had a great secondary coach. Trying to think who else. TCU and maybe San Diego State. I don't remember all of them, but I was trying to keep it somewhat local.
Was the DB position you played in high school too? Would you bounce around, or how did you come to play just DB?
I played corner my junior year, and mainly because I was coming off that knee surgery. I just didn't get my speed back. And, for those out there that are worried about their children getting bigger, I was 5'5", 120 pounds in ninth grade. My junior year, I was about 5'11", 155 pounds. Mm-hmm. And then my senior year, I was probably 6 foot, 6'1", 190. And, I just lifted and started to fill out. God, forgot your question again. Apologize for that. Thinking all the way through those.
You weren't drafted in NFL. Did that deter you from wanting to play in NFL? Or that light a fire under your butt and say, I got to do this. I got to prove myself?
Yeah, I mean, my senior year, we led the nation in defense. We were really good. I think it's the only team I can remember who led the nation in offense my junior year, and then my senior year we led the nation in defense. I think we had 27 guys off my senior team that played professionally, so we had a pretty good team. But because of that, my counterpart, the other safety, was a guy named Mike Richardson, and he was a 3-time All-American. We had Vernon Maxwell, Jim Jeffcoat. I mean, we had first, second round picks. Really good team. So I was the defensive player of the East-West Shrine game in an all-star game where John Elway and everybody was playing in it. So I was more frustrated than anything. When you become a free agent, you are just that. I mean, everybody is calling you if you can play. Mm-hmm. I had Dallas and Pittsburgh, and back then the phones rang about 2:00 in the morning. It's not like today, right? I mean, the draft ends around 1 a.m. back then, and then you're literally getting your landline called to come to that team. So I wasn't discouraged by any means. I knew I could play. There's no question in my mind. It was just what's the right fit. Mm-hmm. And Seattle, Chuck Knox just left Buffalo, and it was his first year. They had just signed him. So I knew right then that, all right, no one will have a jump on me from a scheme standpoint. And then my defensive coordinator, a guy who recruited me to Arizona State, a guy named George Dyer, he had moved to Buffalo to be their defensive line coach. So when that whole staff came to Seattle, he knew me. We were friends. He told me, he said, Paul, he goes, we have 2 great starters in John Harris and Kenny Easley, but the backups, you have a legit shot at making this team. And so I jumped at that. And discouraged, never. More resolved, bit of a chip on the shoulder that every guy in the East-West Shrine game got drafted but me.
Wow.
In the secondary. And I was the MVP of the game. So I was like, all right, I'll show them. And I
was reading over your career, 7 seasons from 83 to 89. Every season, the Seahawks had a winning season except the season you got hurt.
there you go.
They were 55 and 47 while you played. I don't know what game you went out, but they were 7-9 in 89.
I went out with about 5 games left in the season. I had my daughter was just born, and we were playing Cleveland, and I was getting a lot of stingers. It's kind of why I didn't. I started in 88 and 89. I just didn't play very well in camp or even back then they weren't called OTAs. They were called mini camps. Mm-hmm. And I just couldn't understand why every time I got hit, I was getting stingers. I hadn't really gotten knocked out yet, but this game with about 5 games left, we're playing Cleveland. I hit a guy named Ben Manoa, who's about 250-pound running back. And I was sleeping for about 3 minutes after that, snoring. And when I woke up, I didn't remember my daughter was born. And there's a lot of things, short-term memory, I didn't remember. And then I went and played again the next week against the Giants, and I got hit on the side of my chin, real light. And I went down again. And I went, okay, what's going on? And so, long story short, it ended up having 2 herniated discs in my neck. And Chuck Knox basically said, I think you should retire and start your coaching career here with us. And so And that's kind of how my coaching career began there. But no, yeah, it was a good run. I mean, we had really good teams in '89. We started getting old. We had, Dave Craig and Jacob Green. Kenny was gone. Really our stable, our core. We're now in our 30s at that point, and it was probably about time to rebuild.
So you bring up '89. I graduated high school in 1989.
Ouch.
When I was growing up, I was a big Bo Jackson fan, and I believe to this day, him and Dion are the only two guys that have gone both ways. Can you imagine playing both sports, in Major League Baseball and NFL?
Yeah, I'd like to think I can imagine it, because I played baseball in high school, and everybody said, "Do you think you could have played, professional baseball?" And we all say yes. Mm-hmm. But I watch this game now and how much movement, how fast they throw it. That'd have been pretty hard. But yeah, Bo Jackson. Well, I'll talk about Deion Sanders real briefly. Deion could have probably played both ways in football and played baseball. That's how gifted he was. Mm-hmm. Bo Jackson was just a freak. I mean, he was just so fast, so strong. I don't even know how much he worked out. I mean, it was so natural. But I'll tell you a story on Bo Jackson, because my son says I still need to write him and apologize or ask for forgiveness. We're playing him in 1988. And if you'll remember, the year before that, 87, was the Monday night game where he ran 93, 6, 7, 8 yards.
I think he's still running.
Exactly. Through the tunnel. I was on that play, unfortunately. I was on the other side, so I had nothing to do with it.
Gotcha. Okay.
But it showed how fast he was. But when we played in 88, Chuck Knox made it a point that he embarrassed us, Bo Jackson, and it won't happen again. Mm. And so we go into the game, and we're at home, the first game, and I pretty much MF him every play. Mm. I mean, everything in the book, I was just almost had Tourette's, which is funny because I don't curse in real life. But on the football field, between the lines, man, I couldn't stop cussing. It was unbelievable. And I MF'd him and told him, get back to the huddle. I walked him back to the huddle. And it was at the very end of the game. And again, I feel horrible on this one. So if you know, he had a bit of a speech impediment where he stuttered when he grew up, and he worked through that. And he kind of did that. Like, he got so frustrated, and he just said, Moyer, in his way. And he said, F you. Mm-hmm. And I remember thinking, I got him. I got in his head mentally. And I told the story to my son, and he goes, Dad, that ain't right. I go, I know. He goes, you have got to write him and apologize. I said, I know. And I still haven't done it to this day. So maybe next week. But that's my Bo Jackson story. We beat him twice that year. I remember Tom Flores coming up to me and says, you know what? We tried to isolate you on Bo as often as we can, but basically I outsmarted him. I never let them know what we were playing, and I never let that one-on-one out in space happen. So, but Bo was incredible.
I think he'd be one of my favorite people to have on. Him and Ricky Henderson, my two favorite athletes of all time. And I know his career was cut short, but dude, he was a beast. He got a freight train trying to tackle. He could. I mean, I learned how to hit him. I mean, you had to hit him low. If you tried to hit him high or around the thighs, forget about it. Mm-hmm. And that was kind of the era where big backs jumped in. I mean, you had Christian Okoye. Oh, yeah.
Not Larry Johnson. There's another Johnson from Cleveland. And then you had Bo Jackson. All of a sudden, you had these big backs who could run. And with big backs who can run, you better learn how to tackle them. And we just learned, cut him at the knees, really talk to him, get in his face as much as you can. But as far as an athlete, Bo, I don't know if there's a better one than Bo Jackson.
So during your career, you played 98 games, 30 starts, 11 interceptions, 8 fumble recoveries, 4 sacks. Give me the first interception.
I do. It's an easy one. Because we were playing the San Diego Chargers. They were San Diego at the time.
Yep.
And it was against 2 Hall of Famers. One was the quarterback was Dan Fouts and the tight end was Kellen Winslow. And they tried to isolate Kellen on me, which was probably a good game plan. But it didn't work. I cut underneath it and took it back for 19 yards for a touchdown. And I can't remember who brought this up, but I was thinking of my interceptions. Jim Kelly, John Elway, well, I don't think it was Dan. Dan Fouts. And I think there was 4 or 5 Hall of Famers in there. So at least when I got them there against good people.
So you have sacks. You had one each of your years, 84, 85, 86, 87. Do you remember each sack?
No, it's funny. I didn't even know I had 4 sacks. I know I had one against Elway because I have the picture of it.
You have one each of the 4 consecutive years in a row. So
my senior year in college, I had 10 sacks. I led our team in sacks and interceptions that year. We blitzed a lot, and we had this one defense that was kind of fun for me, where I could read, kind of had the option to blitz or not. But I don't remember. I remember most of my interceptions. But the sacks, I don't remember those.
You played the postseason a few times. What was the first time when you made the playoffs? What was it like?
Well, I tell people this. It was crazy because it was the first time the Seahawks had ever gone to the playoffs. And it reminds me a bit of 1995 when the Mariners went to the playoffs. It was just electric around here. And while the 12s love the Seahawks of today, it was a bigger frenzy at the time when I was there. Just because, again, it was the first time. Now because the media and these guys have become superstars, it's a little different. But we played. I'll lead the story up for you. We had to win, I think, our last 3 games to get to the playoffs. One of them I want to say was against Kansas City that we beat 52-49 or 51-48 in overtime, and Norm Johnson hit the winning field goal for us. And then we had to go to the Giants in New York and beat them. And I want to say they called a playback, either an interception or a touchdown that we would have lost the game, but there was a penalty, and we ended up winning that game too. And then the last game of the year, we played New England, and the winner got the wild card spot, and we killed them. We killed New England that year. But the first playoff game was against Denver Broncos.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and we whooped up on them pretty good. John Elway wasn't even starting. Steve DeBerg was playing, and Steve went to Fullerton Junior College, same junior college I went to. And all I remember about that game was my dad was mad at me because at the end of the game, Elway threw a pass out into the flat, and I undercut it, and I just couldn't quite jump high enough to get it. I touched it, but I would have taken that for 6.
Wow.
Mad at me for not scoring a touchdown that game.
So close.
Yes.
I miss the AFC West of the Raiders, Chargers, Seahawks. That was just some hard killing each other football compared to the NFC West now, I think. Do you miss the original AFC West?
Well, it was weird when they decided to make the move. I want to say that Seahawks started off in the NFC West and then moved to the AFC West. They were certainly in the AFC West when I first came there in '83. And I think the rivalry, particularly with the Raiders and Denver, was pretty intense. Kansas City never really had a lot of good teams, but they beat us every year. I never beat them in Kansas City. It was unbelievable. And they had some bad teams. And there was one game I'll remember. There was probably like 8,000 people there. And there was a guy across the field, a fan. Let's say I'm on the 40-yard line. He's across the field on the 10. And I heard him yell, "Moyer, you suck." And I went, "Well, you guys don't have very many fans here." But that was kind of weird. We never beat them. But the Raiders and Denver were big rivals for us. But I'm kind of used to the NFC West now. I mean, the 49ers and certainly the Rams now have become big rivals for us. Even Arizona. There's not as many teams, obviously, as there used to be in the division. But I'm kind of used to it. I hate the 49ers. I mean, with a passion. I mean, it's real. And I think that started back 2012, 2013 when they went to the Super Bowl. Then we went to the Super Bowl. And then it's just now the Rams. I mean, it's a real dislike for each other in Arizona. So, yeah, I kind of miss those rivalries, but I think we've built a couple along the way.
In November '89, you suffered a neck injury, which made you kind of step away from the game. Was that a difficult decision for you to find something new to do?
Well, it was hard, and that's all you know, right? But here's where it became easy for me, Jody, was I came back. I remember my wife and I, Heather, we went to the doctor, and he was telling me about the injury and basically that I need to retire. And I was like, I didn't really hear it. She heard it. And I was like, what does he mean retire? And what at my neck, I barely could hear it. And so when I went back to the facility, Chuck Knox was there and he called me up and he said, hey, look, you could probably have surgery on us and keep playing. He goes, I don't think it's worth it. You've had a good career. Coaches like you. Why don't you start your football career here with us, or your coaching career here with us? And I was like, well, I didn't even know he was going to say that. And he goes, look, there's 4 or 5 games left in the season. Why don't you start coming to the meetings with the coaches, travel, go up in the press box, just see if this is something you want to do. And I'm like, okay. That was a no-brainer, obviously. I mean, you just, I'm 30. I'm not even 30. I'm 28 years old. I mean, that just doesn't happen in this league. And so, I was probably the youngest coach in the NFL at that time. I was a bit on a fast track for them, moving me up the ranks with the staff. So, no, that was an easy decision and something I was really fortunate that I kind of got to wean my way out of, the Sundays for playing and find another outlet.
If you could paraphrase Coach Knox in a couple of sentences, what would you say about Coach Knox?
Well, God, he was how to describe Chuck. Chuck was kind of like the Mona Lisa, or when you go to Disneyland, and when you go to the haunted house, and where that one statue, wherever you walk, is looking at you. Doesn't matter, right? That was Chuck. He was the most intimidating, commanded respect of any coach I've been around. He walked in the room and everybody stopped talking. We were on the practice field. We could all be stretching, and offense is on one side, defense is on the other side. He would have his hat on, pulled down, just above his eyes, and every guy thought he was looking at him. And so it was one of those, you just never wanted to let him down. You wanted him, to be proud of you. And I remember we were playing in 1988, we were playing the Houston Oilers, and Warren Moon was the quarterback. And I intercepted him in the end zone and brought it back down our sideline to about the 30-yard line. It was a really big interception at the time. We ended up winning that game. And I remember watching it, and the only person I was looking for is I wanted to see if Chuck was excited. Like, did he give me a fist pump or anything? And
a smile?
As anything. And Chuck doesn't do that, man. That's just not his style. I mean, he doesn't praise you for doing your job. He praises for, extraordinary effort. But the next day, he walked up to me and he said, hey, great game. By the way, that interception couldn't happen at a better time. I'm like, okay. So when he asked me to coach with him, it was kind of took me off guard because he only talked to me about 4 or 5 times in my career, but they were meaningful. I remember every single one of them. And yeah, he was just a great coach, great leader of men, knew how to get the most out of us. And again, a commanded respect like nobody I've been around.
I came across some quotes by Chuck Knox said, see if you ever heard him before. This came from Jeff Nixon. I don't know if you know him or not, but he said one of them was Coach Knox said, right now, everyone hates us. They hate you. The fans hate you. Hell, the cheerleaders hate you. To them, you're like, well done. And that's the lowest thing on earth.
Well, we have these things called the Knoxisms. And, again, when a man hits the ground, a man gets up, you bring your hard hat and lunch pail with you to work. Hey, there's some things I can't say. Podcasts, I guess. Actually, on podcasts, probably say whatever you want, right?
Probably, yeah.
But he always he would spend hours because when I was coaching, I'd ask him, how he prepared and stuff. And he told me he spent hours on his speeches for Wednesday morning because we would have Tuesdays off. Monday, we would come in to watch Sunday's game. We'd run a little bit. Tuesdays, you're off. Don't come to the facility unless you're hurt. And then Wednesday is our first day of the week. And he would spend, again, hours on the speech, trying to message this game coming up, what he wanted us to do, what to focus on. So, yeah, he was an impressive guy, though.
The other one I found was remember the 6 Ps. Perfect practice prevents piss poor performance.
He had one. He wrote assume on the board. And he goes, don't ever assume. You know what assume is? And then he would cut up the syllables there, and he goes, it makes an ass out of you and me. And Dave Wyman, if I ever get him on, he remembers most of the Knoxisms. There are so many of them, and I loved them. He used to fire me up every morning. There were some of the guys, he'd been around, 5, 6 years, 7 years now. It got maybe a little old and stale for them. But I grew up, with a dad that, talked like that. And to me, it worked.
I called my brother a few days ago who lives in Denver, and I said, you're welcome for our quarterback. I'm excited about the potential of this new Seahawks team. I know we may have a couple of years. In your opinion, can you give a brief review of our upcoming season, maybe the next couple of years, you think, or where the team's going to be at?
Yeah, I think let me break this up into 2 parts for you, because a lot of people say, hey, do you think we're going to be better? What's our record going to be next year? And, obviously I don't know what our record's going to be. We play the NFC West and the AFC West, and we have Tampa Bay. It's a gauntlet of teams we got to go up against. Let's exclude the quarterback for right now, because, it's hard to replace Russell Wilson, though I do think it was the right time to trade him. I think his best football is behind him.
Yep.
I think it takes a certain system for him to be great at. And by the way, when he's in that certain system, he is great. We've proven that. But if you want him to run the Rams offense or, this quick passing game today, that's just not his strength. I mean, he can't see the middle of the field. He's just not tall enough for it. But what he does do well is pretty remarkable. And that's, deep ball. He's accurate. He's a winner. But I think we're more talented right now. You've got to get young in this game. It's a young man's game. You've heard that, but I say it all the time. I love Bobby Wagner, but his best football, was probably 2 years ago. And again, I hope he plays well for the Rams, other than when they play the Seahawks. But it's a physical game, and you got to be physical. And he's lost that element of his game. He's still a real smart guy, and he'll probably do well. But I think we're more talented. I think moving Jordan Brooks into the middle. I mean, I think with Taylor, we've got some speed right now on the edges. I think up the middle with our safeties and our defensive tackles, we got a chance to be a really good defense. It may take a year because they're young, and you just don't know what you're going to get with some of the young guys. I think offensively, I mean, we've got 3 running backs, depending on how healthy Carson is. Maybe we'll only have 2. I think our receiving core is better. Our offensive line's better. I think our tight ends are better. And so when I look at just on paper, I think we're a better, more talented team. We're just young. Obviously the elephant in the room is, how's the quarterback play?
Yeah.
I don't know that that yet. I want to see Locke. I want to give him a chance. He does have a live arm. I think if we do play action it and say, hey, we're getting rid of the ball, play like the Rams played. I mean, can he be a Jeff Goff or better? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And they did pretty well with him. And I think we're talented. So, the over-under is 6 wins this year. I think we're going to be over that, even though the schedule's really tough, and so much is in play on the quarterback. And if Locke or Geno doesn't work out next year, we've got 2 first-round picks, 2 second-round picks, a ton of money. We'll get a quarterback. So I think the future is really bright for the Seahawks.
Got a Hall of Famer question for you. Lockett and Metcalf. Do you think they'll both not be in the Hall of Fame or one or the other?
Well, I don't think Lockett gets there just because I don't think the numbers are there. I saw somebody ranked the wide receivers and they had him like 37th or 38th. He's the most appreciated by far receiver in the league. He is so good. People in Seattle know that. DK it's just going to take time. We got to see how this plays out. It's hard to make the Hall of Fame. I mean, Kenny Easley, we had to beg and plead to get him in, and he was the best safety, him and Ronnie Lott for many, many years. You're talking about truly being the best of the best for a long period of time. It's a longevity issue. So let's let the DK one play out, but I think his best football is way ahead of him. And that is, again, if he learns to be still a better route runner, an intermediate route runner, a little more consistent on the catches, again, not that it's horrible, but to be a Hall of Famer, you got to make those ones. And instead of that drop, maybe you do take a couple of those a year to the house. But they're both pretty good.
So I've been podcasting about 4 months now. I've had a chance to talk on to several sports personalities, a couple from KGR, New York Video last week, and I asked them all these things, and I'll ask you the same question as well, about a colleague of yours who made a huge impact in our community and sports world and Slayer commercials, Mr. John Clayton. Can you share about John Clayton?
Yeah, that was a shock for all of us. Losing John. We had heard that his health wasn't great. And I do a show with him every Thursday night for a segment. We do a thing called Hawks Live, a guy named Michael Bumpus and I. And then during the Seahawks broadcast, we do the pre-halftime post-game show, and we have John on the pre and the post-game show. So, we know John well. And, it's just a sad one. No one worked harder at his craft. I don't know if he knew the most about football, but he knew the most about what was going on, in the NFL. I would say, well, what's going on with that team or that salary cap? John was a sponge, man. He was an encyclopedia that was truly remarkable. So he's going to be missed. He was so devoted to his wife and family and really the game of football. I don't know if there will be another one like him just because the way the media, the career for media now is. Mm-hmm. But he's going to be missed here, and not just in the NFL, but greatly here in Seattle.
And playing John Madden. We lost John Madden in the last year as well.
I was fortunate to meet, John Madden. Talk about some heroes, John Madden. And it's not like I hung out with him, but, when they would, we'd have a Monday night game or a big game, they would always come in a few days early. So when I was coaching, I'll never forget, Dick Enberg was a big one for me. And because I grew up an Angel fan and a Ram fan, and he did the Angel and Ram games way back when. And so I just remember sitting there and having a beer with him in a coach's locker room and just talking. And he's like, "Oh yeah, Paul, I remember." He remembered my career. That was just so weird to me. John was such a superstar. It was, I think he was just at practice high type of thing, and never really got to know him. But he's definitely an icon.
So, remember the first time you met John Clayton?
I met John. I was a player at the time. He had came from Pittsburgh, and he was working for the Tacoma News Tribune. No one really knew who he was at the time. We didn't. I mean, he was just a beat writer. And when I say just a beat writer, and back then beat writers actually were really good at what they did. They got to know you and they wrote really good stories. Now it becomes to me more of, a gotcha editorial with some guys. But I didn't really get to know John well until I was done. I mean, he was doing more ESPN stuff. And then when the Seahawks hired him and he was doing some local radio, that's when I really got to know John.
Mm-hmm.
But John was a very well-respected reporter.
He seemed like a kind of guy who'd give you the cut off his back. It was raining just to give it to you. He seemed, always seen him do TV and hearing the radio and whatnot. He just seemed like a down-to-earth guy. I'm sure his contacts on his phone was probably hundreds and thousands of people, I'm sure.
Yeah, that would be a phone that could probably go into the Hall of Fame.
Oh, definitely.
He worked that phone. He probably had more contacts than anybody. And you're right. He really was. I'll tell you when I liked John the most, though. Great guy. It was I was closing with. But when I liked John the most, we would have him on usually around 7:30 or 7:40 on Thursday nights during the season, during Hawks Live. And John liked wine. And usually about that time, I could tell he was, I don't know, what did Johnny Depp say? A mega glass of wine or mega pint.
Mega pint. There you go.
He may have been into the mega pint at that point. And he would loosen up and he would laugh and he wouldn't take it so serious. Cause sometimes when he's on doing being interviewed, he was very football and always have an answer for the question. We would get him on and we would bring up James Brown. He loved James Brown. So that was kind of his theme song when we would bring him in.
Yep.
And then we would just ask him just life questions and he would just giggle and you could tell he was feeling no pain. And it was our most fun times with him.
The articles I came across always said that he loved doing sports, but that was number 2 to him. Number 1 was his wife, Pat. And I think that's truly amazing.
Yeah. He was a caretaker for Pat. I think Pat has MS. And the last few years it had gotten pretty tough. And so he was having to take her, to get treated and a bunch. And he was very worried about her during the COVID time. So he was staying at arm's length pretty much from everybody during that time as well. But yeah, no, he was devoted and, and what was cool about it is, he let people in too. He let people know what was going on. And I think that just shows his humility and just him being a real person.
So this Chit and Chat podcast is about sharing encouragement, positivity, and kindness. You had the opportunity to work with some amazing players and coaches and personalities. Was there someone who you took under your wing maybe and showed them the ropes or occasions of different maybe coaching styles or what you played?
Yeah, because I say Dave Brown was the one who was my big mentor personally, spiritually. Dave was a longtime Seahawk. Probably there's a guy who should make the Hall of Fame. He has 63 interceptions, and he's not in the Hall of Fame. But mine are probably more when I was coaching high school here at Bellevue High School. Trying to mentor, obviously young kids and coaches. There's some great coaches. Butch Gontroff, who's the head coach at Bellevue High School, one of the finest men and coaches I've ever been around. Could coach anywhere and chose to stay in the high school rank because he loves it so much. So those were some, and I think for me it is interesting because I keep saying, okay, God, why did I leave coaching? I was doing a Bible study with a guy named Dave Brown, and his was I'm going to stay in coaching, and mine was change. It was like, trust me, change. And I'm always like, why was that? And, now in the business world, I get that opportunity. I've got about 24, 25 employees. I get to, try to encourage them in life and stuff. And so it's not just football related. Mine's probably more outside the football world.
I kind of use 1 Thessalonians 5:11, which says, encourage one another and lift each other up. I know the last 2 years have been kind of crap for everybody. So the podcast I do is just sharing encouragement, getting your story. Everyone has a story of whether they fell down or got back up or just, so that's what the podcast is about, just sharing encouragement. Is there someone who inspired you, perhaps, that gave you inspiration never to give up and never to quit? I might have covered this already. You might have said your parents, but just as we're wrapping up, anyone in particular?
Yeah, I brought it up earlier. I think it really goes to my Fullerton junior college days.
Okay.
I was young. You're impressionable. I think those are the ones more, as you get older, you're trying to give back. And so I think in my teens and certainly my early 20s, Willie Shaw, Alfio, again, coaches, guys who weren't just there to win. And I think that's the big difference. And you know it when you see it. There are guys who really care about you. And I've been around coaches who didn't care about me. I gave you another one, a guy named Joe Vitt. Joe Vitt is a longtime NFL coach. Joe, man, talk about tough love. I mean, that guy gave me so much tough love. There was we were playing, it was 1989. We were playing Kansas City, and it was at the end of the game, and their quarterback, I can't remember who was quarterback at the time. He scrambles up the middle, and he's right about to score. And I pull up because I think it's at the goal line. It was actually at where the extra point is, which is about 2.5 yards from the goal line, but it was the same line, same color. And I don't know why, subconsciously I thought that was the end line or the end zone, but it looked really bad. Like I cowered out. And God, man, we go into film the next day, and Joe was our secondary coach at the time, the safety coach. And wow, he lights me up. I mean, he rips me harder than any human being's ever ripped me. And basically, look, if you don't want to play, if you're going to be a coward, these guys are out here playing, Bob, just on and on and on. And I didn't say a word because I'm looking at it, and there wasn't much to say. I pulled up, I was about to tell him the why, but it didn't matter.
Didn't matter.
I remember coming in the locker I was in the shower, and he came into the shower, and he kind of patted me on the back, and he said, "Hey, I had to do that." I said, "I know. I don't know." I kind of explained what happened. I said, "I don't know why I did. I've never done that before in my life." And a lot of it was my neck. I was getting these horrible stingers, and I just remember him. He said, "Hey, you're better than that." I had to do that, because I couldn't allow that in front of the guys. But that was another one where he encouraged me. I mean, I was thinking about quitting after that. Like, man, I just let my team down. And then he's the one who really spearheaded Chuck Knox to hire me as a coach.
Wow.
And so, yeah, you talk about, now you go through tough love. That's why I'm a big believer in tough love. Don't sugarcoat it. Tell people the truth and then encourage them, and they'll respect you for it.
Well, Paul, thank you for your today, and it's been an hour. I really appreciate it. It just has flown by today. In my opening, I mentioned that I've learned a couple of things podcasting. One, don't be afraid to ask. You never know who may say yes, who may say no. You, sir, say yes, and I'm really for your time. And if you're ever in the Silver Burlington area, coffee's on me. I'd love to have a chat with you some more about. I love sports. My dad and my grandpa, so we have a lot in common.
Well, I'll be down your way here in a few weeks at Gold Mountain playing some golf, which you guys have some great golf courses there. And I'll leave this as well as, again, happy Memorial Day. That's not Veterans Day, man. This is the ultimate sacrifice. And I always tell people, I go, I feel like a coward at times when I think of what, anybody in the armed forces has done. And even our, the blue and everybody out there, what they do to sacrifice for us. So it's an important day that we not take lightly. That's for sure.
Amen. Thank you for your time. God bless you, and
appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
What a great conversation I had today with Mr. Paul Moyer as we discuss sports. And some coaches that really inspired him and encouraged him throughout his college career and his pro career. And it was so fun just to talk to him and pick his brain on some things. And so I'm just honored to have him on the show today and really appreciate his time and joining the Chit and Chat podcast today.
I'm familiar with the highway and I'm always on the go. Got some money in my pocket from yesterday's show. Got the wind in my hair, not a care, and I'm doing fine. Tonight I'm playing Little Rock, but Highway 40 gets me too close to where you come to mind. Where the city lights meet the river, there your blue eyes made me shiver. There those blue notes had us dancing right down Beale Street. If I let those memories flood back, I'll be done for. So I don't drive through Memphis anymore.
This podcast really gives me the ability to reach out to people all over and ask them to be part of this podcast and really talk to them and encourage them. And the song you just heard by Jessica Lynn Whitty is a Nashville recording artist, and her song Memphis Anymore. And I'm excited to have her on in some upcoming episodes, and we'll share some of her music. Hope you can check it out. And also her website is jessicalynwhitty.com. It's spelled JessicalYnnewitty.com. And for her schedule, her videos, she has merchandise as well. I'm really excited to pick her brain and ask her who really encouraged her in getting in music, and I can't wait to talk to her. Jessica Lynn Whitty here on Chit Chat, encouraging one another podcast.
It's a really tough bridge and divide for many veterans when they come home from active service. What we try to do is bridge that divide. My name is Brandon Marty, and I am the CEO and managing partner of Veteran Roasters Coffee. There's some great skills that can be transitioned to many different industries within coffee, and coffee's fun. We're all veterans here, veteran-owned, veteran-operated, and so there's a strong connection and trust that we all have in each other through similar service, and we support each other both personally and professionally in that growth. It's all about people here, and my goal is really to help them kind of establish a new life for them and their families, help them understand the benefits and resources available, and really create a pathway to the new phase of their lives.
I want to thank Brandon Marty for being a part of the Chit Chat Encouraging One Another podcast, and their company is offering a discount when you buy bags from them, and when you use the code CHITCHAT25, we receive 25% off. And he said they're all veterans working for the company, and they help veterans get on their feet, back on their feet, having some difficult time when they transition from the military. So just check out Veteran Roasters Coffee. It's coffee with a purpose. Thank you for being part of the Chit and Chat, encouraging one another podcast today. As we had music by Joel Gibson Jr., we had a great interview with Paul Moyer, former Seattle Seahawks. We shared music by Jessica Lynn Whitty, who will be an upcoming interviewer on our show. We'll be talking with her and sharing with her about her story, as well as a message from Braden Marty, the CEO of Veteran Roasters Coffee, in helping veterans get back on their feet. Thank you for being part of this podcast. Appreciate your you subscribing, following, and commenting. Thank you and have a great day. This is Chit Chat, encouraging one another.